Hey guys, it's Tonic. I've been in a constant stage of thinking ever since I played Milk Inside of a Bag of Milk Inside of a Bag of Milk. Long title, I know, but we'll get into that later. Anyways, I'm going to make an attempt to form a somewhat coherent analysis of this game, as it has so much to uncover. Disclaimer though, I'm not a trained psychologist or anything of the sorts. I'm a 16-year-old who likes games, and that's about all the experience I have. So please feel free to let me know in the comments if I miss anything out or get something wrong. Another more serious disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about everything I can in this game, including spoilers and some pretty dark themes, like mental illness, suicide, and all of the sorts. So please click off if you're sensitive to any of that jazz. Enough with the disclaimers, let's get into it. The game starts off by stating its main objective, help me buy milk. Pretty self-explanatory, just help the girl buy milk. Shouldn't be too hard. But with the struggles of mental illness, even seemingly simple tasks turn unbearable. Once you agree to the main objective, you're asked for your name. Keep this in mind as it becomes relevant when talking about the second ending. She starts off by saying that she's on her way to the store. She's rehearsing a speech. This is likely out of fear. Our main character hasn't been to the store in such a long time to the point where she's forgotten what to say when entering. This highlights her struggle with communication. It's hard for her to express her needs to others, possibly since she's been relying on herself. She repeats that she's on her way to the store in speech marks. This marks the start of her using the format of a visual novel to help break down this mountain of a task. To her, it could be easier to process the trip if there is a form of guidance or structure to it. It also helps her with concentration, as she feels the pressure of not making a mistake when she is aware that there is somebody on the other side reading. This is a form of breaking the fourth wall, a technique used when a character interacts directly with the player. The main character follows her explanation with a deep breath in. This could be a way of indicating that she has trouble speaking out loud, as it takes her conscious effort to breathe in before speaking. She utters out part of her request before pausing and admitting her forgetting. This brings us back to her struggle with communication. She is unaware of what it is that she needs to say or do. She starts to self-doubt, saying that she's failed again even after her 19th attempt. But she perseveres and tries again, along with the help of the player's encouragement, praise, and guidance. The player then, without a choice, points out that she has been walking with her left foot on asphalt and her right foot on grass for a minute. This is a likely indication of obsessive-compulsive disorder. By counting the steps, it shows that she's under the impression that she needs to have equal steps. Considering the player had no choice but to point it out, it could be that we play as her intrusive thoughts as well. But more on that later. With the guidance of the player, she still struggles to comprehend the instructions given to her. Surprisingly, she points out that people don't naturally repeat a phrase without paraphrasing, exclaiming that people don't talk like that. This completely screws her perception that she's forgotten the basics of social interaction. When she's in the store, she's met with this monster-looking creature, and does not get the chance to continue her request before the creature states, "Oh." Yeah, just "Oh." The creature and main character start going in a loop of ohs and excuse me whats, up until she admits to the player that she has a fear of the letter O, and pulls up an image of a void. The letter O historically likely started off as a picture of an eye, and corresponded to breathing, rather than the vowel that it is. The creature is presented with small and almost unnoticeable eyes. This presentation could be due to unfamiliarity. It could be that those with eyes scare her, relating to her fear of the letter O. This comes back later with the mother, as she has voids for eyes. Could it be that she dismisses eyes as a sign of unfamiliarity? She also recognizes her distorted perceptions later on, saying that she's aware that these monsters won't hurt her. It takes her a lot of courage to say "Oh" back, and the player praises her for that courage, and tells her to do it more often, which might relate to her repeating the actions of others to assimilate better into reality, breaking that shield around her to become more textbook human. This courage and determination shines through, as she's not even distracted by the player and is fully aware of being in a visual novel, not letting her supposed intrusive thoughts distract her. Grabbing the bag of milk, she gets drawn into the word pyramid, which ends up being the title: milk inside of a bag of milk inside of a bag of milk. This is in correlation of her understanding of language, as well as the ability to process it. She still has that whimsical and light-hearted curiosity amidst all of this, trying to figure out the classification of the milk. The cashier seems to speak aggressively, with short sentences, scaring the main character and causing her to immediately break down, ultimately due to the fear of her mother's reaction if she comes home without milk. She instantaneously goes into this defense mode and pleads towards the cashier, who meant only to collect her money. After giving the money, the cashier spends 2 days examining the cash, according to the main character, when in reality it was less than 15 minutes, as it was 15 minutes until the store's closing time. This brings us to the perception of time within the game. The main character does not realize the flow of time, and neither does the player. The whole playtime lasts less than half an hour, and yet the task takes up nearly a day in the eyes of the girl. Sometimes time is over-exaggerated, and others time is under-exaggerated. On the way back, walking the familiar way home, the main character's hyper-aware mannerisms show through as she notices and describes the feeling of the bag of milk tugging at her hand, comparing it to physical therapy. This is a bit of insight into her struggles with her state and how professional help leaves a lasting memory and impact. She continues with her word pyramid, mentioning how they gave her another bag at the pay machine, and so now she's carrying a bag of milk inside another bag, then stating that she simply likes the pyramidal structure of verbal constructions, which could be a way for her to yearn for the natural human flow of conversation. The player asks how she's feeling, and she thanks them for their interest. We can infer from this that she might have felt affection through the simple care of asking about her feelings. She replies in quite an odd manner, saying that she feels like a mile of ice cream, then further explaining it, but this explanation tells us that she's clearly studied the way back home, adding its familiarity to her. She states that it's simple maths, emphasizing how smart she truly is under the cover of her mind. As she's walking, she even focuses on the way her feet touches the ground, making sure that she counts every meter. At this point, she starts to hallucinate and personifies a truck to a bear, looking at her in mockery as it passes by her. The player brings up the thought of death, and it honestly makes me question whether she's alive through this all. If she was dead for the entire playthrough, and only trying to live out the simple pleasures that she wished she could have done through her past life. Only a thought though. Don't know how supported that honestly is. But the main character goes on to say that the way to the store adjusts to her. This could be a manifestation of pure luck, or her lack of clear sight. She mentions that the traffic lights are clear, and yet she can only see red. But keep that thought on hold as it ties more into when she starts talking about it in detail. As soon as she gets the hint that she might be hallucinating, she's quick to jump to the conclusion that it is the medication's issue, and that she would like to switch her medication. Her constant trial of many different medications could have put her in this state of resorting into believing that they're all useless, which might be true. She might have been catching on to the possibility that her medications are placebos, considering the implied large number of medications she's tried. On the topic of medications, she starts to shut down and become more vulnerable, which reveals her strive for somebody to just listen to her. Could it be that she doesn't want the medications at all, but rather somebody to listen to her and support her instead? She also continues to break the fourth wall by recognizing the visual novel she's in and expressing her desire to talk to whoever is reading. It's as if she's reaching out for some kind of understanding from the player. She admits that she understands that she's going crazy, and hopes that in the end, although her drugs are currently declining in effectiveness, she'll be able to end it painlessly. This could be referring to her state of numbness and objectivity, as she's fully aware of her emotions. The player here is left with open-ended questions that appeal to give her comfort. She also states here her difficulties with communication, past speaking to others, as she is unable to distinguish letters apart, blaming it on her lack of reading. Maybe her digesting communication by perceiving it all as a visual novel is a call to her past self, an attempt at erasing her regrets. The main character goes on to say that she wouldn't like to say her diagnosis. It's as if to her, formal diagnosis is like a box. The labels act as constraints and tend to make people see her for the surface, which is her illness. She wants the player to see her for who she truly is, even asking the player to not take away that pleasure of being seen as herself. Bringing back the fact that she can only see in red, she now says that this has been consistent since something happened, but she also highlights that she's gotten used to it. This leads me to believe that it was childhood trauma. As she developed with this limited sight, it was all she ever knew for a majority of her life. And yet she doesn't want the player to know what exactly happened, although she does say that she knows herself that she will bring it up again. This might be a way of shielding herself and testing the player's trust before revealing such an important moment of her life, as she even asks the player to make a promise, or she could be restrained by her illness. She proceeds to showcase this disfigured image, saying that it's her father. He committed suicide by throwing himself out of the window. She then says that she had a long gap. This might be a reference to his grief, and how she took the whole situation. Ironically, I can't help but think about that common narrative of dad went to go get milk and never came back. I feel like I hear it being shoved down my throat 24/7. So could it be that the task being to go get milk was a hint towards a suicide attempt or disappearance that would be a form of rebellion against her dad's suicide? What makes me think of that theory even more is that she mentions that it's been the first time that she's been able to buy something without a serious incident. The serious incident in this case might be her suicide attempts. It's possible that this was the first time in which she felt guided and not distracted by suicidal thoughts, emphasized by her saying that although the medicine helped, it was more of the player's merit. She thanks the reader and attempts to form more of a connection as we see an increase of comfort. She starts to laugh more and takes off the borders from the text boxes. This could be in relation to the fear of the letter O, as the text boxes are now fully black, and the hex color black is O. This might be a sign towards her finally facing her fears and embracing connection. The player interrupts the main character, telling her that it was rude and to go home. As she goes home, she stops and hangs by the railing, possibly reminiscing about her dad's death. Yet repeating this action has stopped her fear of heights, which brings me back to the theory of her planning suicide. In this case, she could be building up the courage to not fearing the process of death. She's at bliss when the pills come to a knot, and so it links back to the theory of her not wanting to be on the pills, but rather only wanting somebody to listen. It is also mentioned that under the influence of drugs, she has terrible and unpleasant melodies in her head, which leads me to the sound of voices in this game. The main character has a slightly high-pitched sound or voice, whilst the monsters have lower-pitched voices. It's not the most pleasant sound to hear, but not that uncomforting. Yet when you hear the mother speak after the medications have nulled, it's extremely dissonant. In this case, it could be that we hear the opposite of what she hears, considering her distorted senses of both sound and sight. The game has started to come to a close. At this point, the player would have triggered one of two endings available in this game. Ending 1, the good ending, or Ending 2, the bad ending. Let's talk about Ending 1, seen as the good ending. This is the ending in which the main character has successfully brought home milk. The mother comes across as harsh, speaking very blankly. The first words she says are plainly, "Did you bring milk?" On the surface, it can be perceived that the mother does not care about her daughter, and only about the milk. However, it could be in the case where she does not understand what the daughter is going through, let alone have the mental capacity to comprehend it, considering what she might be dealing with herself, grieving her husband, which might have consequently led her to the state of numbness and suppression. The difference between the daughter's eyes being shown clearly and the mother's blank expression comes across as shocking. Although I previously touched on this being a case of familiarity being measured through eyes, it could also be a way of expressing the daughter's strength, an ability to move on, accepting her father's death instead of being stuck in that void. The daughter's success is blamed on the medicine. I believe that there are two main possible effects of the medicine. Either suppressing negative thoughts, as this ending indicates that minimal negative options have been chosen, or she could be facing bipolar personality disorder, and the medication might have been a stabilizer. In the end, she's sent straight to her bed, further emphasizing how draining that seemingly simple task was to her. Ending 2 acts as the bad ending. To achieve this ending, it requires the player to pick 3 of the mean options. The fact that it takes 3 mean options could show her resilience and ability to withstand the negative thoughts to some extent, or also how sometimes having those imperfections or mistakes are okay. She comes to the realization that you aren't helping her, and you get kind of jump scared by the screen that directly addresses the player by their name. It asks the player to retype their name and restart afterwards. But if the same name is inputted twice, it asks again, as if she has issues trusting the same person twice, and yet she still proceeds to give the same player a chance. Overall, this game surely scratched my brain, and both endings left me questioning and reflecting my own actions in my day-to-day life. And I think that really benefited me, as I was able to have the motivation to consciously put effort and notice the small tasks I do on autopilot, and be grateful that I have the ability to do them with ease. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and hopefully I'll be out with the analysis of the sequel, Milk Outside of a Bag of Milk Outside of a Bag of Milk, next. In the meantime, I hope you have a great time thinking, and see you soon.